Really appreciate you calling us tonight. We'll leave it there. Good caller. Thank you very much indeed. Now, earlier on Sunday, Iranian state television suggested that as part of an international deal, Britain would pay a £400 million debt to secure the release of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. That was quickly downplayed by officials in Iran, and the Foreign Office said legal discussions are ongoing over the debt, despite the claim on TV, which cited an anonymous official. Nadir Hashimi is the director of the Centre for Middle East Studies at the University of Denver's International Studies. Hello to you, Nadir.
Hello.
Hello there. So what do you think then? Do you think a deal has been done, or is it too early to tell?
Well, I think these recent reports that we're reading suggest that something is in the works, that there are negotiations that are taking place to secure the release of these foreign hostages that are in Iran, not just Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, but there's many Americans also. And I think the key development here that has brought this question to our attention are the reports that we're getting out of Vienna of the progress that's being made on the Iran nuclear negotiations. I think that's been the big breakthrough. And I suspect there's an effort to strike some sort of grand bargain, not only to resolve the outstanding issues with respect to the revival of the Iran nuclear agreement, but to secure the release of these hostages that the Islamic Republic of Iran has taken in exchange for the releasing of funds and money that is owed to Iran due to financial transactions that go back decades.
And is this as crude as that, Nadir? Is this down to money?
I think it's more than that. I think it's fundamentally about the fact that the Islamic Republic of Iran takes foreign hostages, many of them dual nationals, as a key aspect of its foreign policy. I mean, all of these people that are, in Iranian jails. Let's take the most famous case that many of your listeners will be familiar with, the case of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. I mean, these people are completely innocent. They travel to Iran to, visit their relatives. They're seized by the Iranian authorities with the explicit purpose of getting concessions from the West. Lifting of sanctions, return of money. And so, there's deep ethical and political questions at the heart of this topic that we all have to think about. And one of them is, the deep desire of, families to be reunited. But at the other end of the debate, by striking these types of deals with the Iranian regime, it incentivizes the Iranian regime to take more hostages in the future to get concessions. And so this is the dilemma.
It's interesting that the British Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, said earlier that the £400 million debt was not actually the thing that is holding this up at the moment.
Yeah, I don't buy that. The family of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe has explicitly stated on record that this is the key stumbling block. Iranian authorities have made statements to that effect. And if you look at the past behavior and track record of the Iranian government, they want to get concessions for these hostages, effectively ransom. Now, of course, it's a bit more complicated because in this case, it's not naked ransom that the Iranian government is demanding. They are rightfully arguing that this money is owed to Iran. I mean, they gave the money to Britain over 40 years ago for the purchase of British tanks. Britain never returned the money. And it never returned the money because it wanted to use that money as leverage over Iran in terms of its behavior in the region. Boris Johnson was very supportive of Donald Trump's, general foreign policy orientation. There was a belief that if, Britain returned the money that was owed to Iran, that would be somewhat of a boost to the Iranian economy that was under sanction by the West. So these are some of the calculations that are taking place. The hope is that the money can be returned because that is, money that's owed to the Iranian government, and that these hostages can be released. In the case of Nazanin, it's been over 5 years. She's served her full sentence. It was just announced that she has to serve another year in jail, and she's banned from traveling. So this is, an ongoing, really human rights catastrophe. And I think Britain can and should be playing a much more constructive role in terms of trying to, solve this problem.
And do you think the problem might be solved quickly?
Well, I think there's a lot more reason for optimism now because of the reports that we're getting about the progress that's being made in Vienna over the Iran nuclear agreement, basically having the United States and Iran come back into compliance with the agreement. So I think, I suspect there's been deep discussion and contacts between the American and British governments over this issue and what role the British government, the government of Boris Johnson, can play, what constructive role. And one thing that I think they can do is not only support sort of a united front in terms of how to resolve the nuclear question, but also to play a more constructive role in terms of the release of hostages. And It's pretty clear that Nazanin is not getting out of Iran until Britain returns the money that it owes to Iran over the sales of tanks that go back 4 years.
Right there, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you. Emma, thanks very much for being with